Hey everybody, it is so good to be back into groups content again. I hope you guys were able to enjoy the starter series and were able to really launch in a great way. Maybe you refigured out expectations or figured out expectations for the first time. And hopefully you know each other's story a little bit more and we're able to just even have some fun together. Groups are designed to live life and have fun and grow deeper in your faith as a community of believers. So I'm so excited that hopefully that was a good launching pad for you for this year. But as we jump into content where it's going to feel a little bit different, we're going to do a Foundry announcement just so you guys are aware of what's going on in the church that you may have missed. We're going to do a message recap, and then we'll be jumping right into content. So for those of you who may have missed a Sunday, hopefully you're able to listen to it during the week. But if not, hopefully it's just enough for you guys to be able to participate in conversation well together. So the Foundry announcement that I want you guys to be aware of is last week we had a volunteer fair, and if you missed that, don't worry, because on October 9 we're going to be doing another one here at church after the 9 and 11 o'clock services, and it's just a time to really figure out, hey, what does the church need? What are service areas that I may be able to step into? And if there's some things that you as a group want to do together, please let us know. We'd love, I think it's great to have groups serving together. And I think often one of the reasons we don't serve is because we're like, I don't know who's serving there. I don't know anyone who's going to be there. Bring your group along. Do this together. Find somebody in your group and get invested and get involved to be the hands and feet of Jesus. With that being said, I want to jump right into the message recap. We, over this last week, talked about Isaiah. And Isaiah is a prophet who actually lived during the reigns of many kings of the northern kingdom. King Uzziah, King Jotham, King Ahaz, and King Hezekiah. So what we know that since he was a prophet during that age, he would have seen the Assyrian Empire come and take over and take the Israelites into captivity. And what's so fascinating about Isaiah and this story is that even though he lived hundreds of years before Jesus came onto the scene, before Jesus was born, the prophet spoke about the Messiah in so many clear ways. He prophesied about who Jesus was going to be, and so many of those prophecies are answered in who Jesus is when he was born. So that's going to be fascinating as we go into the birth of Jesus later. But in the interaction between Isaiah and King Ahaz, which we spent most of the time on in the message, what we found is that this king, King Ahaz, refused to listen to Isaiah. He refused to listen to what Isaiah was speaking about, what God was trying to tell him. And he didn't want to listen. And Ahaz even misuses and misquotes a quote from Scripture to sound humble, but in fact the man was very prideful in a lot of the decisions he made. The three things that we hope that you were able to take out of the message is false humility equals arrogance. False humility equals arrogance. And arrogance is following Satan's example. When we look at the way Satan works his way into things, it is often in arrogance, and he uses arrogance to move forward in things. On the side effect of that, the opposite side, humility is following Christ's example. Arrogance is following Satan's example. Humility is following the example of Jesus Christ. And I hope that as you look at your life, you're able to distinguish the two and say, okay, how am I approaching this situation? Is it in humility or is it in arrogance? And I hope that in the group's conversations that we have for you today, you're able to dig a little bit deeper in that. So without further ado, let's jump right into the group's questions. Alrighty, we're going to start out with an icebreaker. The name Isaiah. So the prophet Isaiah, his name means God saves. And I think that is just so fitting for this prophet Isaiah, because he was bringing a message that is saying God saves. God will save you if you turn back to him. But the question is, do you know what your name means? Do you know what the definition of your name means? I looked mine up, and it's actually gift of God. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice to hear today. Sometimes I do need to hear you are a gift. People don't tell me that enough. I'd like to hear it more. But take a minute, and if you don't know what your name means, Google it and go around the circle and see, does your definition actually fit who you are? All right, before we jump further into questions, I want you to start by reading Isaiah 6, 1 through 8. After you get done reading, answer a few of these questions here. Describe the most difficult assignment you have ever had to complete. Share about a time when you felt unworthy or unqualified for a specific task. And think back to what you just read. What was Isaiah's response to the call in his life? Then I want you to jump ahead to the next chapter, Isaiah 7, and read verses 1 through 14. And this is going to be going into the encounter that Ahaz and the prophet Isaiah have between each other. So take a minute to read Isaiah 7, 1 through 14. In what ways does Ahaz display false humility? Have you ever had a time when you maybe come across as humble, but in the back of your mind you actually have false motives around it, but you're sounding like a good person in it? Like, for example, you may want to get out of visiting an elderly family member, so you think, I shouldn't go visit them now because they're probably pretty tired because they're old, right? Like, it sounds nice, and you're like, oh, it sounds like they're being so humble and so gracious, and yet you actually just want to lay on the couch and watch Netflix for the afternoon. When we think about this, describe a time when you said things the right way to sound humble or godly, but really you had bad motives behind it. In the message from this weekend, Eric shared that arrogance follows Satan's example. Do you agree or disagree? And why? Here's a good question next following this. Why should we or why should we not try to determine if someone else is truly humble? How can you practice true humility? Where was humility missing in your life this past week? All right, groups, that is it for our normal content for this week. As always, make sure to end in prayer. And we, as a group staff, would love to just be able to pray with you guys on some things. Let us know if there's something you're struggling with. We'd love to join in forces and pray for you guys. So let your leaders know if you're willing to share some of those things with us. But if you do have time and want to jump into, there's a Digging Deeper section that spends some time looking at Isaiah 53 and the parallels of the prophecies he has and how Jesus answers those things. And then also, there's a second section coming out of Philippians 2 that talks about the attitudes and blessings that are produced in the lives of God's people. I think it's really rich of information. So if you've got time and want to dive a little bit deeper today, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we will see you guys next week.